Hey, just a little informal video here. I've had a lot of people request this over the years to see this book, or they no longer have access to it. They've seen it before. But this is from, I don't know if there's an actual date on here. I would assume it's the year 2000. I don't know if they put a date in here or not. Let me see. I'm not sure. It's 2000 or 2001. I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure. It might have been early 2001. Trying to think in connection to September 11th, around that sort of like a, a time stamper. So this was from a company called Digital Vision. They made this thing called Infinity. Um, I made two CDs for this. A bunch of the guys from Virtual, a bunch of other people that were doing the same style of work at that time, which was this sort of crazy futurism, I guess you would call, style of the 2000s, the early web design. Um, I'm sure some of you who follow my work that are old school remember that stuff. That's kind of what most people remember my work as, more than the newer stuff. Um, so 20 years ago, we were doing all these things, and it was sort of the first sort of expression in web design. Well, this company, Digital Vision, was sort of a Getty Images of the time, which I think Getty actually bought this company later on, if I recall. But anyways, I'll get into it. A lot of us did artwork for it. I did 60 artworks for this, which was two different CDs, and the work, ironically or strangely enough, I guess, ended up sort of crafting where I would go for the next 20 years up until now. These were stock image CDs. The funny thing about this project is you could take royalties on the sales that were going to happen, which I would typically always suggest that, or you could do a payout. I did the payout because the payout was so good that it actually sort of gave me like a year and a half salary within like 3 months. It took me about 2 to 3 months around there to make these images. This was right when I sort of resigned from Virtual. The .com boom was sort of collapsing, and Virtual laid off a bunch of people. I didn't get laid off, luckily enough, but strangely enough, after they laid everyone off, they wanted us to keep doing everything the same with a very small staff, to which I declined and decided to resign. And when I resigned, I started on this project. So it was an amazing transition to go from basically doing cool stuff to doing even cooler stuff that I got complete control over. There was no creative directors, nobody telling me what to do. I get to do what I wanted to do, and they loved it. This client was, an amazing client. They just let me do whatever. And we provided layered Photoshop files. So they actually use one of my works to show how you use the product when you buy it. It comes with different layers. One of the things is we had to sort of, if I recall, I had to set up the files a bit more simplified and kind of flattened. So we gave them the designs. People would buy these. So it was a new idea at the time. You got to imagine this is over 20 years ago. And the idea was you were getting these Photoshop files instead of typically stock images where people shaking hands and just really boring kind of, for the most part, stock imagery. This company said, hey, these guys are doing really cool artworks. What if we could allow people to buy the Photoshop files and sort of control the design themselves and give them design options? They use some more of my work here in the examples. These are some other people. I'm going to do my best to, I'm kind of filming through the phone into the book here. So I'm going to do my best. This is showing some other work. These are not all mine, so I'm going to try to point out some of these works. So this is not mine. This is Jens and James worked on this. If you remember them, they're from 3.0 and Chapter 3. These were close friends of mine. I still keep in touch with these guys from time to time. Um, Two Swedish amazing designers. At the time, they were extremely young when they went to America. I think James must have been 17, 18 years old when he came to work at Virtual. Um, and we were all highly immature. Which is what allowed us to just be total maniacs and just do random stuff like this and then expect like corporate clients to buy into it. And most of them did. Um, So this was some of James and Yin's contributions to the project. I mean, I still, I mean, to this day, I think these guys, if I had to pick, I would pick these guys as sort of the best of this style at the time, of all of us. I thought that their their design work and the details was absolutely stunning. It's not going to come across that much in this video, but I mean, if you can see some of the just the details and the alignments, the overall design that they did, these guys were masters at it. And some of these I'm gonna go through quick. Um, some of the people I don't necessarily know, like this guy, I don't actually know him personally, and I didn't know him at the time. But some nice work. You know, they tried to add more people in here that would have these things. And again, sorry, I can't. Some of these names I can't quite see as clear the way I'm holding the book, so I might actually know these people, but I can't see the name. Like this aura, I don't know who this is. It says, oh, Nathan Flood. I know Nathan. Sorry. Nathan was a kid that worked with us for a while at Virtual. Very talented as well. Very young. He did some amazing work. So he contributed to it as well. Um, this one is Patrick. I knew him a little bit just through online. Didn't know him personally or anything like that. But again, you know what's funny is a lot of this style is coming back now, 20 years later, and it's referred to as Y2K, just being the year 2000s. But it's funny because now that I'm like old, and you see people refer to Y2K, and they just because what's funny about this project is it then led me to go into create youworkforthem.com, which eventually ended up selling stock images, graphics, and I still do that to this day with font designs. So this was sort of like a gateway into what I'd end up doing, like I said, for 20 years. I don't really do client work. I haven't done client work in the 20 years. I probably, I did client work for the first 5 years or so, and then got away from it. So I see all the time people submit work and they say Y2K and it looks nothing like this, and I'm just like, what do you think? I just think it's a newer generation that just it's sort of like a they're taking inspiration from it, but they'll say like, oh, they'll try to say it's actually just like the year 2000. I'm like, it doesn't look anything like it, just because you use a rounded font or something. And then this was some of the contributions I did. So Mike Young, Designgraphik.com. This was me when I was probably like 23 years old. So yeah, over 20 years ago. So yeah, and so they were showing like this design was actually Digital Vision working with the Photoshop file and sort of just doing their own layouts. But we had to contribute 30 artworks per CD, and I loved it. I would do probably 2 to 3 artworks a day, and then just hang out. Like I just started dating my now wife at the time, so it was amazing. I would work on this, chill out, and then go hang out with her, for the rest of the day. And it was just amazing. And then to get paid good money, I'm so glad I took the payout, not the royalties, because I think the project was only even sold online for maybe 2 to 3 years, and then they pulled it offline. So yeah, this was a bunch of the works at the time. So again, this was all from, the year 2000, 2001. Some of these, I might still have some of them posted somewhere online. If you Google like Designgraphik Digital Vision, I think some of it comes up. But I had lots of fun. Again, it was all the 3D stuff. My work in general is still very much the same to today, which is using a lot of 3D forms. And I always use 3D and photos and stuff to sort of create the sort of canvas, the substance, the depth of the work. And now it's just transitioned to I use a lot more AI stuff, which the AI is trained off of 3D from the past 20 years or so. This is from Bradley, Gmonk, and Anders. They worked together. Anders was from Deform. They did a really good job on theirs as well. They have some really good works in here. And you see some artists, they work together. Because these guys, they were still working at the time. So where I had taken a pause from Virtual and was basically had resigned. Most of these guys were still working at Virtual London at the time. So they were having to do this in the after hours. So some of them would team up together to do that. And then this is a totally different style. I don't know who this is. Rod Steel Wired. Um, these are pretty cool. See some of this, which is very similar of that sort of. It's a fade out from the '90s David Carson sort of uh, the Seven intro. Man, I'm drawing a blank. I forgot his name. The guy who did the Seven intro and everything. He was a very famous designer. I've forgotten it now. He started. Was it Imaginary? But this fade out of David Carson sort of style in the '90s that was a huge hit, and into a more techno sort of vibe, you know. So this was pretty cool. So you can see some of that transition in the style. Obviously, Attic was huge at the time. Designers Republic. I would say Attic and Designers Republic were the huge superstars at the time of sort of this genre. And we were sort of the next phase of that, sort of remixing all that. And then this one is Sean from Aeroform. I remember this guy's work. Again, you can see sort of the Designer Republic influence with the arrows. But again, it was sort of taking it somewhere else. Everyone has inspirations from something. And we were all taking sort of the guys that were out there working with clients, making money, and we were sort of taking it and doing our own sort of, you know, no one was paying us to do this, except for in this case where we were. But this was work we were doing anyways. So here's some more. This one is Supermodel. I don't know who this is. It says Shinter. I'm not sure. Again, this is similar to sort of the colors and styles that I was doing at the time. But no one was the you know, like sort of the original in any of this. It just sort of shows what's cool about this book 20 years later is you see how the style sort of affected so many artists and how they all sort of kind of did their own thing with it for the most part. But you know, these were, again, this was a book to showcase CDs that you could buy, and you were basically buying a license, you know, to get this, which again is like what I do now which is what I do with my company now. Um, these were pretty cool. This is from you might know Tom Muller and I don't know Steve in here who's listed here, but Tom was in Mirror Labs. He just goes by his name now, and you could find him now on Instagram and Twitter and everything. He posts quite often. Works in the comic industry a lot. You can see their style, how they were doing it. Again, you can kind of see how most of us from virtual, there's a lot of crossover how we work because we were obviously working on projects together. But I'll kind of move along here. This is Adrian Luna. You can see his work. Let me see. I'm going to try to get to where my other series was. I'm trying to miss anybody else out of my close friends. Here's Unro, which Unro, you can see his work on Twitter still. He still creates artwork. So it's pretty cool. Everyone's 20 years later, a lot of these guys are still making work. Now, obviously, styles have sort of progressed on. Yeah, and this was the second set I did, which was a little bit different. It was a little bit more, I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of more flatter graphics and stuff. They wanted something that was a little bit more 2D and less 3D-ish and kind of less brutalist and stuff like that. So some of these photos were like from when I was living in Baltimore at the time, in DC area. I still really like this work. It's pretty cool. I like this one. Some of these older ones, I still, you know, some of these, they really stand out and I still sort of draw inspiration from them for myself. This is probably like the Beltway in DC or something. Some of these older ones. But I mean, you know, it's funny because stuff like the pixel stretch, we were doing this 20 years ago. We were doing it in video 20 years ago. Like some of you might remember, I did a Sub Method series where the videos was doing it, and it's still used to this day. Like people still use that effect, which is pretty funny. And then people have made filters and all kinds of stuff from that. It's funny. This photo was from like a trip in London. But yeah, so it was a pretty cool project, you know, and a lot of amazing artists took part. And again, I'm really happy that I did it. Here's some more. This was with G Monk and Onro did some stuff together. But it's a cool book, you know. I'm lucky I have it. I haven't checked out what's on the CD. I'd have to break out an old CD-ROM. But it was a really cool project. It's kind of old and falling apart a little bit, but it's held up. but it, it was nice. Like I said, this is, a project like this. It gave me the freedom to start my own company, and basically shaped where I would go. So I forgot the woman that I worked with on this project, but she was amazing to work with. This client, like, it also sort of gave me, it set me up for a very, uh, I don't know what's the right word, but it gave me a very good client right from the jump, from when I started my own company and freelancing, that I thought all clients were going to be like this, and nothing could be further from the truth. And so they were an amazing client, probably one of my first big clients, and it's definitely the client that gave me the funding to move out from working for a company. Very lucky at age 23, and go on to start my own business and everything else, and just gave me a lot of confidence and uh, you know just self-confidence overall, to just say, hey, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to create my work, and if you like it, you'll buy it, and if you don't, you don't, and that's it. And that's the same approach I take now 20 years later. So I know a lot of people had actually wanted to see that, wanted me to talk about it a little bit. If you have any questions, just let me know, I'll answer them. But yeah, that's that.